In Peru, social indigenous organizations mobilized from different countries and provinces to Lima as they joined protesters demanding the resignation of Dina Boluarte. Trade unions and human rights groups in Argentina mobilized to demand the release of the social leader Milagro Sala, who has been under house arrest for the last 7 years. And also in the United Kingdom, the Scottish teachers have taken to the streets demanding a salary increase in line with inflation. From the headquarters of TeleSUR in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. In Peru, members of the Aymara and Quechua communities, as well as social organizations, are mobilizing from different provinces to Lima as part of the second edition of the so-called March of the Four Suyos to demand the resignation of Dina Boluarte. Also, the representatives of the Aymara people communicated that they will travel to Lima this Monday and indicated that they will stay until the president, Dina Boluarte, resigns. Social and union organizations are also heading in caravans from different provinces of the country to the capital to support the protests against the Boluarte government. The demonstrators are also demanding the closing of the Congress, a constituent assembly, and the liberation of Pedro Castillo, who has been detained since December 7, 2022. The first March of the Four Suyos, forming groups of the native people, was a popular mobilization carried out in Peru in July 2000 against Alberto Fujimori's illegal maneuvers to be re-elected. The Brazilian government deployed all security forces ahead of possible new coup attempts announced on Monday by radical followers of former President Jair Bolsonaro in the capital's esplanade of the ministries. The Minister of Justice and Public Security, Flavio Dino, reported on Friday about attempted attacks on national infrastructures on Monday. According to the minister, the country's administration will have to mobilize millions and millions of reals to provide security to infrastructures and public buildings threatened by the pro-Bolsonaro groups. Dino stressed that some groups are trying to create an atmosphere of instability and psychological warfare in the country, but there is no chance of repeating what happened on January the 8th. Trade unions and human rights groups in Argentina mobilized on Monday to demand the release of social leader Milagro Sala, who has been under house arrest for the last 7 years. Argentina's social movements will meet at the headquarters of the State Workers Association in the city of Buenos Aires. The Assembly for Human Rights permanent resident, Eduardo Tabani, said they will be denouncing the complicity of the Supreme Court of Justice with Governor Geraldo Morales to carry out illegal actions against Sala. The social leader was arrested in 2016 for alleged incitement to violence after leading a protest in Jujuy against the changes imposed by Morales in the cooperative program. Since then, she has been under house arrest. Sala said her detention sought to silence the Tupac Amaru movement. During an interview for TeleSUR 7 years after her arrest, indigenous leader Milagro Sala pointed out that her arrest was prepared to dismiss those who worked to help the unemployed Argentinians after the privatizations of the 90s in the country.
My arrest wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a question of Morales coming up with it because he had political problems with me. It was all a setup, because they had to overthrow the organization that had worked very hard and had raised the comrades who had been left without work in 2001 and in the 90s. Let's not forget that at that time companies were privatized, many state companies were left in the street, railroads were also dismantled, and at that time there was no political party. Not even the state had taken care of the unemployed.
The indigenous leader, Milagro Sala, assured that although she did not want the pardon a year ago, she now dreams of being held accountable before the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, since the regular justice system in Argentina failed to give her this opportunity.
Look, a year ago I didn't want a pardon, and today I would like a pardon. Do you know why? Because I dream of one day sitting in front of the Inter-American Court and being held accountable. I want to give an account. I want to account for what they allegedly tell me I have stolen. I want to give an account to the people. Yes, because unfortunately, with the justice that some of us have believed in, it didn't happen.
The indigenous leader also denounced the toll her arrest had on her family.
My family has been destroyed. My husband is very sick. Well, my son is also very sick. My grandson is still suffering the consequences of this, of my detention. They completely disarmed my family. And they also disarmed the Tupac. But nevertheless, our Tupac comrade resisted these 7 years, and they are still marching. Today, they are still marching in the streets of Jujuy, despite the fact that many believed that just because they had me, the Tupac was going to disappear.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In the United Kingdom, Scottish teachers have taken to the streets demanding a salary increase in line with inflation. Scottish teachers from 32 counties gather in Glasgow for a day of protests. The teachers said the walkouts will last until February the 6th. Meanwhile, schools in Glasgow remain closed. The authorities had submitted a proposed 5% salary increase to the teachers' union, but it was rejected as they are demanding a 10% increase. The teachers' union has announced a stoppage of at least 3 weeks. And Christine Lambrecht has resigned as Germany's defense minister following a series of mistakes and a much criticized New Year's Eve message. Lambrecht's year in office became a succession of minor scandals and statements that many saw as tone deaf. Her resignation came as Berlin gets under rising pressure to allow the delivery of German-built battle tanks to Ukraine. The former defense minister was mocked by her announcement that her country was supporting Ukraine by sending 5,000 military helmets. She was also widely criticized for failing to improve Germany's notoriously equipped armed forces. In Spain, thousands of healthcare workers returned to the streets of Madrid on Sunday to protest against the dismantling of the public health care by the conservative regional government of Isabel Ayuso. With banners that read SOS Public Health and Stop Privatization, the demonstrators departed from the Ministry of Health in Madrid and marched towards the Queen Sofia Museum Square. They condemned the shortage of personnel and criticized what they considered to be a favoritism shown by the regional authorities towards private healthcare providers. In this regard, they demand better working conditions to avoid overloaded care that hinders the provision of primary care to the people. And Matteo Messina Denaro, one of the bosses of the Cosa Nostra mafia in Sicily and Italy's most wanted man, has been arrested by the police while being treated in a private health clinic in Palermo. Prosecutor Maurizio De Lucia announced the arrest of the man who had been a fugitive since 1993 and was considered by Europol one of the most wanted in the continent. Messina Denaro was tried and sentenced to life in jail in absentia in 1992 over numerous murders. This included the killing of prosecutors Giovanni Falconi and Paolo Borsellino. The mafia boss also oversaw racketeering, illegal waste dumping, money laundering, and drug trafficking. And the Italian actress Gina Lollobrigida, who achieved international film stardom during the 1950s, died in Rome on Monday at the age of 95. Often described as the most beautiful woman in the world, her films included Beat the Devil, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Crossed Swords. She co-starred alongside the likes of Humphrey Bogart, Frank Sinatra, Rock Hudson, and Errol Flynn. According to Italian news agency La Presse, Lollobrigida died in a clinic in Rome. However, no cause of death has been cited. In September, she had had a surgery to repair a thigh bone broken in a fall, but she recovered and competed for a Senate seat in Italy's elections held last year in September, though she did not win. Now we move on to other topics. Mexico's National Center for Disaster Prevention issued an alert due to the increased activity of Popocatépetl volcano. In the last 24 hours, the activity of one of the 6 volcanoes identified as high risk has increased, reporting 214 exhalations resulting in ash and 2 explosions followed by steam and volcanic gases. Therefore, the Prevention Center called on citizens not to stay near the crater area due to the danger posed by falling volcanic fragments. Meanwhile, the General Coordination of Civil Protection announced that people should be watchful of their instructions since ash fall is expected in the next few hours in Puebla and Tlaxcala states. In the United States, deaths rise to 9 after several tornadoes hit the southeastern part of the country. Authorities reported that the most affected states were Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. Efforts to find people trapped under the devastated area continue in the region. Weather reports forecast more tornadoes, and the government of President Joe Biden approved a disaster declaration for the state of California, which has also felt the disastrous effects of the severe storm. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. The Ukrainian armed forces launched 3 shells from a multiple rocket launcher into the Donetsk city on Monday. Andrei Baevsky, an officer from the Donetsk People's Militia and a member of the local parliament, stated in an interview with local media that 2 people were killed and 4 injured in the attack. The official also said that emergency services continue to work at Zin. Meanwhile, the city's mayor, Alexei Klemzin, confirmed damages at a shopping mall, 2 residential buildings, a mechanics shop, a fixed route hub, and a distillery. And the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, confirmed the organization will establish a continuous presence to oversee Ukraine's nuclear power plants. The IAEA Director General said the presence will include security experts at all of Kyiv's nuclear plants to help prevent a nuclear accident during the ongoing conflict. Last week, the UN international organization said its teams will deploy to the 4 Ukrainian nuclear facilities, the Kremelnytsky, Rivne, and South Ukraine nuclear power plants, as well as the Chernobyl site. They also said the most difficult part of the security mission may be embedding a team permanently at the Zaporizhia plant, saying negotiations and negotiating a safe zone around it has been challenging because of the proximity of the fighting. Ukraine and the European Union signed a memorandum of understanding and a loan agreement on macro-financial assistance for $19 billion. The signing took place between Ukraine Minister of Finance Shory Marchenko, the Governor of the National Bank of Ukraine Andriy Spiviny of Kiev behalf, and by Executive Vice President of the European Commission Valdis Dombrovskis on behalf of the EU. In the meantime, Ukraine Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal announced that they expect to receive the first $3 billion aid package this week. He stressed and expressed his gratitude to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the Vice President of the European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis. South African President and leader of the National African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa, has cancelled his trip to Davos for the World Economic Forum. The announcement was made by the presidential spokesperson Vincent Mangwenya on Sunday. The current energy crisis in South Africa, due to its aging coal power infrastructure, has brought on record blackouts of up to 12 hours due to troubles at the Eskom state-owned power utility over the past 12 months. Ramaphosa was due to lead a government delegation to the World Economic Forum in the Swiss Alps next week, but will instead remain home to hold talks with Eskom executives and political leaders. The outages have cost the country hundreds of millions of dollars in lost output, disrupting commerce and industry and injuring the population. At least 10 people were killed and 39 wounded on Sunday in a bomb attack on a church in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The Islamic State jihadists claimed the attack. Congolese military spokesperson Anthony Mwakulashi said the terrorist act happened in a Pentecostal church in North Kivu province's Kazindi, a town on the border with Uganda. The Democratic Republic of Congo's communications ministry said on social media that the attack was apparently carried out by the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF, which the Islamic State group claims as its affiliate in Central Africa. The ADF is one of the deadliest of the more than 120 army groups in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, many of them the legacy of regional wars that flared at the turn of the century in the vast impoverished nation. Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem has warned about the collapse of the health system in the Gaza Strip due to the blockade implemented by Israel since 2007. The organization reports that thousands of Palestinian patients are forced to apply for permits to access hospitals either in the West Bank, Jerusalem, Israel, or other countries, and that only a fraction received the authorization. They say that Israeli authorities obstruct that the possibility through various arbitrary procedures. According to data from the World Health Organization, in 2021, more than 15,400 people in Gaza submitted requests for treatment abroad, but only 2,165 were authorized. That is 14% of the total. And Tunisia's independent electoral body announced the second round of the parliamentary elections will take place on January 29th, amid growing calls for cancellation of the electoral process. The first round, which took place on December 17th, recorded an 11% turnout, the lowest ever registered in the country. Opposition parties, including the Salvation Front coalition, boycotted the election, arguing the vote is part of President Kais Saied's efforts to consolidate power. Consequently, thousands of Tunisians marched in the capital to demand the resignation of President Saied following the unpopular election and difficult economic situation in the country. Nepalese authorities resumed rescue efforts on Monday to recover the 4 remaining bodies after a plane crash on Sunday with 72 people aboard. Rescue teams returned to the crash site this morning, where they are trying to pull the 4 bodies out of the deep gorge, said Kaski District Chief Tek Bahadur. 68 lifeless bodies have so far been recovered after yesterday's crash of an ATR-72 aircraft, which crashed while recovering the route between Kathmandu and Pokhara. The delivery of the identified bodies to their families started on Monday, while the bodies of the 15 foreigners will be airlifted to Kathmandu today. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.